The United States of America is a culturally diverse place filled with people with various characteristics that make them unique. Throughout its history, America has been synonymous with the idea of liberty to do as you choose. Many people have left their home countries, and their prime destination was America because of the opportunities that they could have there. In the early stages of immigration to America, starting in the 1890s, ships bringing immigrants would dock at Ellis Island to let out immigrants for the process that would allow them to enter the United States. Before departure, ship clerks would notate the names of the people on their ship, and immigrants would often change their names when reciting them to the ship clerks so that they would appear to be more American after they were processed.
All these people took this giant step in trying to better their lives as well as their families. Some families spent every last dollar that they had in order to pay for a ticket to America, not knowing whether or not they would be allowed to enter. These people were fleeing war, famine, and largely persecution to a land that they knew offered a wide range of opportunities. The American dream pushed them forward when everything seemed to be pushing against them. A unifying characteristic of the American people is that they are willing to do what it takes to strive for greatness, to climb to the top despite everything thrown at them. These people, immigrating out of the only land that they have ever known for possibly generations, could already be considered Americans as they fought with everything that they had to make it to America to achieve this better life for themselves and their future descendants.
All throughout the history of America, Europeans have immigrated to the US for a variety of reasons: escape from political and economic hardships in their own countries, as well as the demand for work, abundant natural resources, and cheap land prospects in America drew the people of Europe to America since the discovery of the New World. This desire for a new start and a better life is what some might say is what makes these people American after settling in America. However, no group was free from assimilation into the American culture.
Some groups of people were able to maintain an amount of their culture, and some were assimilated entirely into American ideals. There's large pressure to Americanize from not only nativist voices, but also from other groups and even within some groups. It seems like these various groups began to consider themselves American when losing their original cultural identity. The Scots, Scotch-Irish, Welsh, and Dutch settled in small groups, so they would be forced to entirely assimilate. Some groups would be clumped together by region and way of life, like the Southern Whites. The Yankees, Pennsylvania Germans, Roman Catholic Irish, Jewish, ethnic Europeans from Southern and Eastern Europe, Scandinavians, and Russians were some large groups that maintained cultural identity through religion or attachment to their lands of origin. Some groups established enclaves like Little Italy's or Polish hills that preserved much of their culture.
One side of my mother's family immigrated to the States around 1870. The area where they moved into, they formed kind of a little Italian colony, and they tended to keep to themselves because the Protestants in the area didn't really care for the Catholics. But the longer that they lived here, the more that they wanted to recognize that we're in America now, and so they wanted to kind of assimilate and fit in more, so they started sending their kids to the local school in their own little Italian school. And as the kids learned English, and when we're switching back and forth from English to Italian, my great-great-great-grandfather would tell them, we're in America, you speak English now. And so a lot of the kids started to lose their Italian because they weren't speaking it at home. And I think it's really interesting because with that, a lot of the correct pronunciation of the foods that they ate began to change. And we kind of joked about how they bastardized the Italian language in the little village that my mom grew up in central Illinois. My mom's maiden name is Vicini, but by proper Italian pronunciation, it should be Vicini.
What a perfect example of the depth of Americanization, how it even stemmed from within some immigrant communities, and how it resulted in new cultural traditions and dialects specific to regions of the U.S. Part of Americanization was the enforcement of the ideal that anyone can achieve their goals if they work hard. However, this ultimately damages immigrant populations and causes more tension, since there is a lack of equal opportunity for immigrants due to xenophobia and nativism.
Around World War I, Americanization was very drastic and popular. After the war, people began to question forced Americanization, arguing that the U.S. was born from a diverse group of people, and thus conformity is inherently un-American. People began to think that America should accept and preserve more cultures, or allow the array of cultures to blend over time to create a new American identity. We can see the result of this blend of cultures today, where, because of the large amounts of immigration, many citizens can't trace a discernible ethnic identity, instead describing themselves as simply American.
Not only has the process of immigration affected European, neighboring countries of the United States have been greatly affected as well.
Ever since the Mexican-American War, the people of Mexico have sought to move to the U.S. in order to better their lives, and more importantly, their children's. But the conflict of illegal immigration and tactics used to combat it have caused lots of disagreements and racially motivated abuse. The negative propaganda that was advertised against these people has caused them much harm, both to illegal and legal immigrants. We will speak with Sophia Park, a third-generation immigrant who lives on a border city with Mexico, and will speak to us about her observations of the conflicts. What is the major reason for immigration from Mexico to the U.S.?
People who are trying to come to the U.S. don't have the best lives there, and they're just looking for somewhere better to live for either them or for their families.
How heavy is the pressure to Americanize on new immigrants?
It's very heavy. People have been coming to the United States for such a long time and feeling the need to fit into the standards here, which I feel goes any place you go to, trying to fit into what is a norm for them. But sometimes it's pushed too far where people are forgetting their own culture in a way to fit into a new one.
How do you think Americanization affects the more recent generations our age?
I feel that some are forgetting their history, like their culture and like where they came from. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. Just because you live a very prominent future here that your grandparents or your parents were able to give you, that doesn't mean that you should let go of like your past.
Do you think that race affects the immigration process?
It really depends on who exactly is immigrating. If it were to be someone Hispanic coming in, I feel that border control would be more hesitant in letting them in, whether it would be someone from Europe or Canada, just because how they appear. That is very harmful to like everyone, just because everyone is coming here for opportunities, and just to get shut down for that is not the best output.
What do you think makes a person American?
Everyone who comes here or who was born here always says they come here for work or they're here for their hard work. I just think to be an American, you just have to be hardworking and be here, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're born here. I don't think it takes much to be an American. I don't think you specifically need a certain thing to be an American.
Along with border conflicts, there is a large pressure to assimilate on all immigrants as they enter American society. Nativist sentiments towards immigrants play a large role in the connectedness between Native Americans and those who immigrated recently, as the moves of immigrants are closely watched by the rest of the community that they settle into.
These negative feelings towards immigrants lead to various distinct cases and how they mix with society. In one case, immigrants who receive constant negativity from the people around them will wish to push themselves away from those negative attitudes and enter an enclave in which they are free to be themselves in any capacity they desire. In another case, immigrants who wish to fully Americanize themselves give up many of their distinct cultural traits in order to be accepted into this new society. However, despite these great changes, many natives refuse to acknowledge the immigrants' assimilation and instead continue to treat them as outsiders.
The assimilation and integration of immigrant groups into the pre-existing American society is described in the concept known as the melting pot. The multiple distinct cultures combine together into one unified American culture.
The melting pot idea is widely used to describe American culture, unified through the assimilation of immigrants into the pre-existing culture. However, the salad bowl and pressure cooker are better examples in replacing the outdated melting pot ideal, because when you really look at it, the melting pot encourages the high assimilation of immigrants and the loss of unique cultural traits. Meanwhile, the salad bowl beautifully explains the idea of the together but unique manner in which American society should truly be about. The salad bowl highlights the importance of keeping one's own cultural traits to further enhance society. However, the pressure cooker is slowly beginning to take over as there is more pressure for immigrant families to act American. There is enormous pressure for these families to abandon their traditions and unique attributes to conform to the ideals that society wants them to live by, despite the fact that the foundation of the United States is built on the idea that people deserve the freedom to do as they please. Immigrants have fought long and hard to achieve these freedoms and rights for their families, but even in a welcoming country, they still have to fight for the ability to remain true to themselves.